A very good morning to each and everyone. We have Mr. Uh, Anup Khandelwal, who is the CEO and founder of Kirana King. Sir, very good morning. We have, so you're not audible.
I think, now I think I am audible now.
Yes, Anup, you're audible. So we have.
Good morning, Mr. Jubair.
Good morning. We have Amit Jain, who will join us now in some time. He's also one of our panelists. We have Harji Kapoor, who is the Chief Strategy Officer with FEFC. And Harji is a seasoned advertising and branding professional and who loves to define himself as a storyteller and problem solver. A big hi to Harji.
Hi.
Hi, Mr. Harjit.
Hi,
Yeah.
hi everyone.
And we have Mr. Kaustubh Dhargalkar, who is a PhD into innovation management, and he's a design thinking consultant and founder of Potential and Possibilities. He's also an acclaimed professor of innovation and design thinking. Kaustubh.
Hi. Hello, everybody. Nice.
Okay. So, first of all, a warm welcome to each one of you. And we have got close to 160 plus participants, who are to take up your expertise and understand their challenges and questions and what are the opportunities this 19 has thrown up. So as I already said, I would be talking about more about the opportunities and not about the gloomy things. So I would throw up I'll open up the discussion with all of you. And my first question to all of you is, a highly challenging time for the mankind, not only for business, but for the humanity as a whole. And first question is, how do you think an entrepreneur or a new entrepreneur or a startup founder should remain optimistic?
Directed to anybody specific or?
Anyone can start now.
I think there was a post going around which was attributed to Mr. Ratan Tata, where finally it was not a comment by Ratan Tata, but that quote made a lot of sense, that every problem is an opportunity. It was cited that various pandemics led to XYZ things, disruption happened, and completely new normals were set. So I think one firstly has to be open to getting over that status quo. We've been used to doing a lot of things, and we want things to be running the way we expect them to. So, and when that gets disrupted, a lot of us get mentally psyched. I think we have to be open-minded to look at all the opportunities that are coming up from that space. So remaining optimistic and open-minded, and also very sharply focused on trying to understand how customer user journeys are changing. If we can actually, if an entrepreneur really starts looking at user journeys in the domains that he or she is operating in, how they were a month back or 2 months back, and how they are evolving. If one keeps observing those, I think there are a lot of opportunities to be explored. I'll stop here. Opportunities, etc., we will talk about later. So, yeah.
Okay. Harji would like to chip in on this.
Yeah. Hi. So I agree with whatever's just been said. Now, I think the important thing is optimism is more an emotional state, right? So let's put business aside for a minute. You're stuck at home with your family, you're missing your friends, you're missing going out. So I think to remain optimistic, it's very important to look at your immediate, your surroundings, your support system, the people who you're living for. You can't just get sad and give up because there are people around you who will be impacted. So I think optimism as a state of mind, since we're all at home and locked down, it's not just the individual's responsibility. I think the families, the condos that are sealed, the communities that are all facing all of this that's happening, they have to come together, and the optimism has to be a collective index right now, and not just an individual owners, because this is not something that affects either you or me or any isolated person. It's everybody who's affected. I don't think anyone is shielded, if not indirectly, directly, but no one is shielded. Everyone is facing a problem. So I think optimism will have to not be a mehuna kind of a thing that I will be optimistic and be a light. You'll have to find a collective light of 100 small candles and then light it up rather than just holding up a torch.
Beautifully put across, Archie. 100 candles lighting together. Beautiful.
It wasn't a political input. I'm sorry. It had nothing to do with the candles we lit a few days back.
No. I move on to Anup. Anup, what's your take on the overall things and how you think the entrepreneur should remain optimistic during this challenging time?
Yeah. So thank you very much. So what I believe that life is like a sailing ship, basically in the sea. So sometimes tides are high and sometimes tides are low, but still ship has to continue sailing. So we have to be optimistic, we have to be positive, and we have to stay focused to achieve our business goal. That's what I believe. Because something is not in our control. If we think too much, nothing is going to come up. So we have to focus what are in our control and how we are going to plan ahead to fight this and to overcome from this. I will say that the biggest crisis in this modern world.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what my philosophy is.
Okay. So people say that there are a lot of things. What we do and how we operate in our entire ecosystem will change permanently. The way we live and the way we do business post Corona. What do you think? Things that would change in totality. People are now getting used to virtual classes. I have seen a lot of people doing some Zumba classes online, and people are doing small exercise sessions online. A lot of innovative ideas are coming. So a lot of things will change permanently. What are your thoughts on that?
See, my belief that basically many of the sector will get correction because like my entire journey of 25 years of entrepreneurship, right? Which I never seen that companies are getting valued maybe every year 2 times, 3 times or 4 times, or maybe within a 5 year 5 times. So what I believe that this pandemic situation is going to have correction, whereas the people have to believe on the ground reality, not on the cloud reality.
Yeah. So since you happen to be from the retail industry and you are into a journey of redefining the entire grocery thing and with the tagline of India ki Nai Dukaan. So what do you think the retail and the grocery sector would shape up after this?
Right. So very simple, because this is the idea of the Kirana King was born in 2014 after having been 50 plus country globally. And that's how I figured out that how the grocery business works globally and locally. And after my lot of research, especially modern trade, general retail, modern retail and e-retail, I figured out that the future of the Indian grocery retail lies on the ground, not on the cloud. And this business is all about malikon ka dhanda, not about manager ka dhanda. And also basically Indian retail, every like self-employed people, basically we are not like America or Europe, whereas the retail chains are operating by big chains. Here every individual self-employed who are running a 300-400 square feet of shop, irrespective of format, basically irrespective of the like grocery retail or electronic retail. So what I believe personally that the general, anybody who will empower to the general retail, who will empower to the existing ecosystem, they will be grow more faster. It means there are assets available, there are talented manpower available. So basically we need an innovation, not a disruption. That's what my philosophy we are carrying. So the complete business model, what we have in Kirana King, that we are creating a network of existing mom and pop shops under single brand umbrella Kirana King by way of uplifting their infrastructure and giving them fresh new look and appeal, and connecting these stores with a centralized purchase solution and promoting these stores among consumers through various marketing activities, digital, print, electronic media, and very soon connecting these stores with a hyper local e-commerce, whereas basically consumer can feel convenience. Basically. That is what our philosophy, what we are getting.
Great. Kaustubh, Bharji would like to chip in on this.
Yeah, things are the way it is. The normal is shifting for sure. One, I mean, I would take it theme-wise. People are going to get conscious about going into crowds. People are going to get conscious about anything which has to be touched. So let us take non-contact as a theme. One, obviously, non-contact comes when comes to education. That physical classroom is changing, etc. Now, a lot of immersive features will come into that edtech space. AR, VR utilities plugins will have a real big scope. Because a lot of these edtech platforms don't have that real classroom feeling. Some of them do, but a lot is desired. So there's a lot of scope there, I feel. Then coming to non-contact and healthcare, there will be an emphasis. Now, today we are not testing enough. That's what the world is saying. India is not testing enough. But why is testing not happening enough? Is because testing today needs drawing of blood out, which is contact testing. So there will have to be technologies which enable non-contact testing at mass scales. So, some people are startups dealing in the space of computer vision, high resolution cameras, etc. will find a lot of opportunities. People, let's say, for example, I'm talking something that may take 3 to 5 years of research. Like, if there is a camera which scans your breath to see what organisms you're breathing out and taking in. If there are high resolution cameras like that, which can capture the organisms at that level. So I'm referring to this as a microscope moment of the 21st century. What the microscope did 200 years back, same thing will happen with even deeper visions. So there are startups dealing with those kinds of spaces will have a lot of scope. For example, just an analogy, when terrorism became a part of lives across the world, we had metal scanners while entering airports and public spaces. So maybe we'll have these high-res cameras scanning you and giving out a warning, infectious hai nahi hai, those kinds of things, possibly. Then I come to all the public spaces where there are interfaces, lift buttons or any interfaces that we touch. People are going to be very wary about touching them. So in the long run, maybe in 2 years or so, most of it will become non-contact, voice-enabled, or other kinds of biometrics will come in. Iris, etc., all that is there. I'm not going to talk about it, but voice enablement, etc., will come in. And in the meanwhile, till that shift happens, maybe for the next 2 years, we will need disinfectant coatings for all these interfaces. So people dealing with silver nanotech particles and stuff like that, which is bactericidal and virucidal, so to say. So those kinds of industries, I feel startups dealing in those kinds of industries should look optimistically at things. There are other things also, but we'll take it as it comes. So maybe somebody others.
Absolutely. So innovation is the key. Who would have thought that drones would be used for sanitization?
Absolutely.
Harji, your thoughts on this?
Actually, I do have thoughts on this. I think there are huge opportunities for startups going ahead. The world as we know it has changed. But before, you can actually leverage those opportunities, you will need to recalibrate your own thinking. What I genuinely believe what startups will have to start finding now is what I call intellectual ambidexterity, right? So everyone who has a business plan today has this, a clear idea of the numbers, the growth, the slide. But investors are going to start asking you things like, value and social impact. Because what this has done is the entire world's apathy index has been reset. As I said, no one is shielded. There are people for example, who were not affected by wars or famines or human suffering. But now, because in some form they are also facing a suffering, whether it's being locked down or not having their favorite meals, the apathy index has been reset. So here the brands become very important, like, minimum or actually an MVP is still the way for a startup to build and test and grow. But a minimum viable brand is no longer viable, because your loyalty, as Kaustubh said, it's going to be a contactless market for a while. Your loyalty is going to be much harder to get. You're going to have to work a lot harder to gain the loyalty. Already the customer is extremely fickle-minded, as is abundant choice in the market. Now it's going to get even more difficult, because even the way people work, when I say intellectual ambidexterity, it's just it's organizations as well. Your 9 to 5 mindset will have to change, because the work from home will become much more prevalent. It will become much more acceptable. And so the actual thing that we should ask ourselves is that we will come out of this being more smarter. Will businesses also become more kind? Because it's harder to be kind than to be smart. That's what I believe.
Okay, great. Since Anup is there, I would like to ask one question about the Kirana stores and the way they have been operated. A lot of shift was, towards bigger shopping malls and the big retail stores. However, in this pandemic, people have realized the most trustworthy is our friendly neighborhood Kirana store, who has supplied non-stop, groceries requirement. And we have kind of redefined the Maslow's need hierarchy, that what are the basic needs for us to survive. So, Anup, what do you think? This would give more trust to the roadside Kirana stores which are there, and people would shift back to them from the bigger shopping malls and bigger online retail stores, the D-Marts and the big bazaars of the world.
So here I would like to correct a little bit that the Kirana segment got highlight not today. The Kirana segment got highlighted before 2 years from all the national level player or the multinational e-retailers, basically. The news, the various news you can get. So it goes without saying that the mom and pop shop is going to exist in the country like India, whereas the geographical situation doesn't allow to operate the big malls, and especially for grocery retail. The reason why in India, the grocery retail will stay with mom and pop shop, because the margins are very low, which will always be driven by independent retailer, basically, and whoever will empower, it means they will drive their business. So definitely, in my view, the existing Kirana stores, whoever is getting business right now, they are going to face little bit challenge after a few months. The reason why the big players all got, this sector got in the eyes of the big players, right? So definitely the potential of Kirana segment, it means the basic needs. So every big companies are planning that how to reach to the last mile. So to be very frank, we are very much optimistic that the way earlier it used to take long time to convince to the retailer to change their mindset, to adopt the transformation under brand Kirana King, or life will be more easier to get increased numbers. So we are optimistic about our business model. The more and more people, the threat will come definitely in the market. They will understand more.
Great. And if I go into little sector-wise things wherein a lot of people are looking and eyeing, to start up, or they have already started, or they are planning. Online gaming as a segment has, seen immense growth during this lockdown. What are your thoughts on online gaming startups which are coming, which have planned? Do you think, similar kind of growth would be there, the way, people have changed their lifestyles?
Yeah, so here I would add something, because the latest survey of the Nielsen came yesterday, right, day before yesterday, that the consumer is going to be bearish on the discretionary spending, such as movies, restaurants, visit, luxury brand, leisure travels, and defer spending on fashions, personal grooming, home decor, even the coming months after the magnitude of the outbreak lessens. And consumer may spend less on alcohol or maybe in tobacco products. That is going to be consumer behavior. The main focus of the consumer is going to be the basic needs, health and hygiene products, healthy organic products, medical needs, fitness, mediclaims, education, and financial investment may some of the key shifts in the consumer behavior. So gamings and all that is all about the killing the time. I will not say there is a much more things which every individual can do or learn whenever basic. So I'm not in favor of the gaming, to be very frank, and I don't have much idea about to talk about gaming.
Kaustubh and Harji seems excited to come in.
I could be talking from my personal experience, but people like us, our age, we are not into gaming, as Anup. But our entertainment was probably Premier League, Euro, Olympics, XYZ, cricket going on around XYZ. That's completely at a standstill. So I feel for the gaming companies, we might be a good opportunity, middle-aged folks, 40, 45 plus, who are not as savvy as on PSP and FIFA and stuff like that. But so maybe gaming companies could look at targeting our age group, 45 plus, and bring them into that zone with some simplified games, not so much of dexterity, on the screen, etc. Possibly that.
So to be very frank, I try to always basically avoid the digital gaming. So I believe in physical gaming like a chess, Ludo, Carrom board,
So
that's what I
believe. Games are there is the opportunity for digitizing those.
Yeah.
Possibly.
So always about the gaming always I am against about the digital gaming, to be very frank.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Zubair sir. I think Amit sir has also joined us. So yeah, if you can ask a few questions, and so I would like to welcome Amit sir as well in the session. Welcome Amit sir. Welcome Anup sir, Harji sir, and Kaustubh sir, everyone.
Hi.
So I also had a small question in between. Sorry to interrupt. So basically, as all of you, have a good employee base, and the biggest problem which I feel for all the startups and businesses today is that how will they give salaries, and how to come a major chunk of expense which they have is to give salaries. So what is some innovative solutions you people have figured out? If you can, share some insights on that, it would be great. Over to Zubair sir.
Yeah. I hope you heard the question right. So Himish wants to ask, about the managing the finances and the challenges, the startups are facing about the salaries and the cost of operating the businesses. So operating expenses would be a challenge for startups as well as the salaries. What are your thoughts on that?
I think Amish sir can share some views on that and followed up by everyone.
Himish, can you check from the back end? I cannot see Amit on the screen.
Yeah, I was muted and I could not unmute. Only host can unmute.
Yes. Welcome Amit. Welcome to the session. Thanks for joining in.
So I was trying to fiddle around with your controls. They weren't working. The question is around managing salaries at this point of time?
Yes. Salaries and operating expenses.
I think the answer will be very sectoral and very different for each startup. We have 5,000 people with practically little revenue left now because cars is a discretionary category. While we do believe it will come back more strongly because of the fact that people would prefer personal mobility over shared mobility in the days to come. We'll have to obviously ensure that all the good team is intact and we are not basically losing good people in this phase or losing the spirit in this phase. So far, and luckily we were well funded before all this happened. Frankly, we had raised 2 rounds. So answer would be very different based on context of the situation for each company. We have not taken any action as of now as a company, and luckily we are also running a very tight ship in terms of our burn rates are always very controlled. We've run it like that forever, like a proper dhanda rather than trying to chase valuations, right? And the company actually had bootstrapped for 7 years, so the DNA is about running it properly rather than I've been running this startup for now 13 years, right? And for 7 years we did not have any fund. We bootstrapped and ran profitably for 7 years. So practically, I think the fundamental shift of unit economics is going to happen now. Will we take some action? I think we'll have to take some action. Will we try to, rationalize salary cost because that's the maximum cost for us? We have touched everything else already: rental renegotiations, other kind of expenses, licensing. A lot of people were shifted from Microsoft Office to, Ubuntu, Open Office kind of things. We have optimized practically everywhere where we could. Manpower is something sensitive, as you all know, to touch. But would it be required? I think yeah, it will be required, and we are gonna basically go about a blend of pay cut and and ensuring that the rated fives are in and ones are taken out. PMS had been launched, so I think the answer will be very different for each company. Our company specifically will try to retain as many as we can and not let go of many people, while we'll adjust salaries accordingly to cut for a temporary phase to manage the situation. That's how we look at it right now. But not many can look at it because we have like a 3-4 year runway in the funds we carry and the burn rates we have. Not everybody would be able to do in a format that we are doing. So every founder, I would advise, should practically look at the runway and ensure that he has enough cash. And if it means going deep, go deep, but make sure your runway is at least a year or two left by cutting expenses. And as in a smaller startup world, I think the team is more aligned and cohesive. So doing that change is easier. For a 5,000 people company like ours, it's a little different because not everybody is connected to founder. But for smaller startups, to get down to 50-60% cuts is also not too difficult, provided the team is aligned. For a company like ours, it's a very different situation.
Okay, great. So, Anup, you'd like to chip in this?
Yeah, well, basically, of course, we are still in Jaipur, and we are basically small size company, and so far we didn't had any action about, but definitely it's going to be cost cut. So reasonably, what we are trying to do is to retain our entire manpower, because which we have developed during last years, and we'll try to accommodate as much as possible. And of course, there is going to be a little bit cost cut. And how we are going to, it's going to be, let's say, defer, or it's going to be compensation from one way to other way. That's what we are philosophizing.
Okay. Okay. So there are certain questions also, and I would like to also ask one question, that the education technology space, wherein the something which is very upcoming and which has got an immense scope, the education technology. How do you see the education technology startups as an opportunity? Harji is excited and wants to answer this. Yeah, Harji, over to you.
I think not just education, the three sectors I see really doing well in the future in a post-COVID world is education, healthcare, and alternative energy. And I have a reason for believing that. The Zoom classrooms for our kids have told us that we can have a virtual, a class that can reach every corner of the country. See, how I look at it is, today you need to be able to impact the lowest, guy at the bottom of the food chain across the country. A virtual classroom, the technology is there today. You collaborate with an ISP, a large ISP, we all know who that is, and you reach every village. Same thing for virtual medical care, the clinics, a contactless, you can say a cloud-based, clinic. That brings me to the question, when I share this with people, they always tell me, every village doesn't have electricity. That's where alternative energy sector comes as a huge potential for startups, because technology today has the potential to reach a village even before electricity does. You can make that happen if you, as I said, again, intellectual ambidexterity. You need to start thinking about the softer side of your business, unless now your left brain high fives your right brain, when you have an idea. I believe it's going to fall flat. So education, alternative energy, and healthcare are going to get a large boost from, I'd love to see ideas. And we have technology like, a blockchain can ensure examinations are held absolutely right across the country for the education sector. Blockchain can also ensure that if I, as a doctor, have consulted a patient today, the next doctor who comes in and consults the same patient has the case history in place. So there's no lost in translation. You don't keep getting a CombiFlam course every time, whereas you have a better way to move forward, right? So these are actually the three sectors where I think there's a huge opportunity, and we have technologies. I heard someone mention about AR and VR coming in, Internet of Things. So this is actually going to boom. Education is going to boom, and healthcare should boom. I hope there are people who are working on these ideas as well, because a lot of people, I also spoke to someone, they talked to me about, a brilliant idea around gaming. Someone spoke to me about using a 3D printer for making more masks. Like, I think that's slightly myopic, because you're actually believing in 2020, we're going to have a solution or a vaccine, hopefully much sooner than what, came for all the other pandemics the world has faced before. So, so let's not hedge our startup idea against human progress and scientific development to look a bit, larger scale, because a 3D printed mask might be relevant today. It will sell like hotcakes, right? But maybe after 6 months, when we have a vaccine, or we build herd immunity, or we build herd immunity in a year, people will stop, actually using those many masks. Same thing goes for gaming, right? You have time today. I can get into gaming today. Anup can get in, Amit sir can get in, Kaustubh sir can get into gaming today. But when things get better, and I believe they will get better, because that's opportunity and optimism, we won't have that time. So then that particular startup, which only wanted to cash in at this point of time, and it's very dangerous for startups right now. People at home writing business plans, and they're writing business plans to cash in rather than make value. As Amit sir said, build a runway. There are people who I talk to who are not looking at building a runway. They're actually looking at cashing in, right? That cashing in won't work. I have someone who's telling me that right now I can hire a tech team because a lot of excellent people are out of jobs, and I can hire them at a fraction of the cost. Sure, you hire them for a few months. So what happens when the market opens up and they find their genuine value elsewhere? How will you scale or sustain your business at that point of time? So I think the runway point is very important. And these sectors will boom if people can think innovatively and manage their expenses. Yeah, you do need money to start up. So I would suggest using a friend and family round first. Reach out to your bua, your masi, your uncle. Everyone has a rich relative. Please reach out to them and start off.
Okay, great. Absolutely, it's not a sprint. It's a marathon, and it's a long term thing. Okay, Kaustubh, to chip in on education piece.
Education, when people refer to edtech, they refer to it as a mass. They look at universities and schools and things like that in terms of the conventional education kind of thing. But now I was just reading about 3-4 days back that we have a shortage of 6 million nurses across the world. Okay, now how is that gap going to be? That's a long-term need. It's not a short-term need, right? I'm looking at specific opportunities in education. Now, 6 million nurses, how the hell do we train these people? So that's where non-contact virtual training comes into the picture. And that's a huge opportunity. Now, when you train a nurse, it's not a classroom kind of a thing, right? You got to give them real immersive experiences in terms of how to handle a patient, in what situation it will come in, etc. So that's where AR VR comes in very, very strongly. Now, in addition to that, just AR VR is not going to help. You will also have to give that trainee nurse or a boy, a ward boy, sister, whoever it is, some physical feeling of some organ, tissue, body, anatomy, physiology, right? Now that's where 3D printing comes into the play. So, and these are long-term requirements. The kind of frequency of pandemics that has been happening, I'm not talking about the Spanish flu and old stuff, but 2000 onwards, SARS, MERS, Ebola, Nipah, etc. The gap between these pandemics has begun to reduce. So maybe we might see another similar situation. Instead of 5 years later, we might see it 3 years later. So this healthcare space is going to, it's not a question of cashing in, it's a runway building space. Now that's where I see in those niche spaces of education, startups need to identify that. My problem is when people talk about edtech, they only focus on university education, school education, etc. Online, Udemy, Coursera, etc., etc. But these niches which are coming up and which will last long, those need to be identified. I just touched upon training of nurses and such. But there are a lot of other things also which are coming in there, So those need to be identified by startups, and real building has to happen there. That's about the education. Other things, yes. I mean, manufacturing supply chains have broken down today. And over the last, say, 40 years, we have perfected the art of just-in-time inventories, JIT, right? And at such times, that JIT, just-in-time, doesn't work because we don't have buffer stocks. All right. Now, that's where I see where the real estate people, there is scope for warehouses now. So rather than building co-working spaces and office spaces, maybe that the real estate guys need to really, change the compass towards warehousing, possibly, because companies will look at alternative to China. So, and Indian government, Japanese government has already called their companies back from China. South Korea is doing the same. US will do probably the same thing. And I think we are also going to do the same thing. So even in the manufacturing space, startups in the manufacturing space need to really look at those kinds of opportunities coming up.
I think.
Yeah, I'll stop here.
Amit, I think you want to come into this education.
Look, education, fundamentally every parent needs to educate the kids, and this period has forced everybody to go online. All schools are practically running on Zoom or Microsoft Teams or other softwares. I think there's a fundamental shift already happening because of the fact that schools are open and parents do want education and schools are running really right. What I foresee is, there's a fundamental shift towards people thinking कि virtually कैसे होगा to coming to a point जहाँ virtual के अलावा option नहीं. And I think a model is already emerging, and a lot of my friends across me, Vedantu, they're seeing a massive surge on volume, right? In terms of people subscribing to the courses. With everything shut down, JE classes, etc., the tests, Unacademy is doing very well. So one-to-one tutor training, one-to-many, in a classroom format, is becoming popular already, and there's a surge already being seen. I think EdTech has definitely got to gain a lot. But with everything, obviously, it's going to peak out as if it extends further. The more it extends, better for education sector, because the shift for a behavior shift to happen, it requires a little more time. The people who have never went online, it will require at least a quarter or two to basically get in there and then settle down to a little peak up, and then it will drop down not to the level but much higher levels. Like Zoom has gone so high, it will come down post corona obviously, but will it be at the same level? Never. It will be much higher. So I personally feel the education sector is gonna benefit a lot, obviously for obvious reasons. And no parent or kid will ever not do education. That's a basic hygiene.
Sorry, I think there are a lot of questions for Harji sir we have. So there's a good following Harji sir. As to this one small question. So how do you navigate through the dystopian mindset of potential customers? What branding strategies could, for example, a healthcare startup use to change the consumer mindset in the long run? So Harji sir, your views on this, please.
Yep. I don't think it's a dystopian mindset. It's a fickle-minded mindset. So for this, you need to fundamentally understand the difference between a brand and a product, a commodity. Brand is not a commodity. People pay for a product, but they buy brands, right? So let's assume brand is a personality. It's a humanization of whatever you're trying to sell. And like, how do you convince another person, a stranger you meet, to actually become your friend is the same philosophy. Be genuine, be honest, be upfront, look to add value. Don't get into discounts and gimmicks, because they will work after I have entered into your immediate space. And I think the fundamental strategy, as I said, most people ignore brand. People build a product, look at the distribution channels, look at the supply chain, and then they say, brand, when we have money, we'll do it. As of now, I'll get my my nephew to open a MS Paint and make something for me or as a logo, and another pal of mine will make a business card, and I'll have an identity. So people, for example, have to, like, they educate themselves about everything else that they're doing in their business. Educate yourself about branding. Branding and brand design are three different things. So first of all, educate yourself that where are you in your journey, in your journey, and what you need right now, and then move forward.
Okay, absolutely. And Anup, how do you see microcredit as a segment, post Corona? Because a lot of people would require money in microcredit is a segment wherein there is a huge opportunity. What are your thoughts?
Really, you see, if during last couple of years, the the lot of NBFCs has emerged who are basically providing working capital loans to SME sectors, and this segment has got a lot of attention and attraction as well, basically, because in India, especially, as you see, the economy of the the big contribution in the GDPs of the retail, and the retail lies with all these SME sectors who are basically depending on daily buy and daily cash. So to empower them, basically there is a huge opportunity lies in SME segments, because people have realized, even banks have realized, that lending big corporate houses, if they have to chase, they have to go out of the country. So the SME segment got huge attention, and the biggest challenge where companies face, basically, these people don't have any ITR returns, GST filings, and all that. And based on the technology, and so they have come up with various solutions and various products, basically, whereas basically the SME sector can have leverage.
Okay.
So to be very frank, the money is not a barrier for the SME sector to grow. There are various basically institutionals are available which are providing basically to across verticals.
Okay. So Amit, your thoughts on this?
The lending norms will get stricter because of NPAs going high, and you'll see policy changes happening for the banks in terms of every kind of loan triangle. And I think it's not going to be the way lending would work earlier, because banks will see a very different, post moratorium period is over, banks will see a very different level of NPAs coming in my personal take, because of human behavior also of not wanting to return and using this as an opportunity. Many business people would use that, which will basically affect the other people who really genuinely want to take money and return back. So I think there will be change in policies of lending that will get stricter. It will also affect our sector, automobile, where car loans are going to get tougher for a particular cohort of segment of people. We are in for a different time, and we should brace ourselves accordingly, I would say. Micro credit, now what's going to happen is the cohort of people who will get lended will be differently. So I foresee that while government sector would obviously try to support more and more such SMEs to and different kind of profiles for credit. Having said that, the private bank will operate a little differently on policy front. I already know how policies are changing at the banks level, like big private banks. So it's getting stricter norms are being put already.
Yes. So extending my existing question, how do you see the existing microcredits who've been doing good, before the Corona outbreak would see their collections and the money coming back?
So they should definitely buffer in a much higher NPA than before, and a much higher collection cost than before, is how I would look at it. I think a lot of people are going to use it as an opportunity to, not pay. Some would genuinely not be able to pay because of wiped out well.
Right.
I'll just come in over here. There are a few actual questions for our panelist over here. In fact, Haji has sort of gotten a fan following himself. So the last 2-3 questions are for him. So I'll start from the bottom and I'll go up. So first of all, Haji sir, that's there's a compliment for you. Haji is excellent and well prepared. And that's great. How he perceives Kirana business in the next 2 years, and what strategy a startup should keep in mind. So, I mean, that could be directed to both Anup sir and Haji sir across to you guys. I think you guys are.
I would like to hear first from Arjit because he came from the marketing background, so I will learn maybe a few things from him.
Oh, perfect. Cool. Haji sir.
Because the one point which I guess, there is a huge difference between a branding and a brand.
Oh, yeah.
That's what we communicate. That's what we are communicating to the Kirana retailers, that during last ages, you are promoting basically people's brand. You are unable to create your own brand identity. So that's what we say. There is a huge difference between a branding and a brand. So Mr. Harjeet, for further comments.
I personally, I don't know how it will actually play out, but here's what I'm hearing conversations. I live in a complex with about 1,800 odd people. We're all locked down. And I've heard all my neighbors talk about that once, even when this is over, we're going to make a conscious effort to support the small vendor, the small shops around our market. Because for the first 15 days, when we reached out on the big portals, the big bazaars and the Amazons, we were either told we are not delivering or our delivery slots are full. So somewhere that has impacted. The second amazing thing that has happened, a collaboration has started happening between the Kirana stores, which earlier had their own following. So now I call my regular store and I ask him, do you have XYZ? He says, even if I don't have it, I'll get it arranged from you. And I know with my relationship with him, he'll go to the shop next door and buy it and send it. So a hyper, collaboration that actually works in the market is going to happen between those stores. I genuinely want people to actually patronize the smaller shops, the smaller vegetable vendors, because these are the people who are out there in the, on the front line, so we can stay home and feel comfortable, and we can afford social distancing, we can afford hand sanitizer, clean water, and those people are out there, so we can also decide, we aaj khane mein kya hai. That is such a simple thing we ask, but do you imagine that now it is so much more difficult to get that every piece of thing here, and those are the people who are doing it. So I, for one, would definitely move from a larger chain to the shop right next door. Or there's a small shop in my basement who gives me my milk and eggs every day. If he starts keeping more stuff, I would definitely go to him. Of course, I will use the online portals as well, but that will happen when whatever I need is not actually fulfilled over here. I'm sorry, Anup sir. I come from a complete emotional index. I am an EQ person, so basically I'm low on IQ. So you'll have to forgive me for that.
The Indian economy of the retail is almost touching $1 billion. I mean, say $1 trillion basically, right? Whereas the grocery retail alone plays approximately 60%, which is about $600 billion economy. And the grocery retail is still, if I say in a hypothetical manner, 90% still remains with the traditional method, right? And the overall online grocery is barely a 0.5%. There is a long way to go. So I believe in a phygital, basically. That's what it means. You see, the many online companies, big companies, they have tried earlier, and they are again coming to the mom and pop shops to tie up to reach to the last mile. Because the biggest problem in India is the last mile connectivity, and the last mile connectivity cost is very high. And nobody can have the last mile connectivity the way mom and pop shops can have. And Kirana business is all about emotional touch. That is going to remain. So what we as a company are trying to do to leverage that asset and the leverage that relationship to empower this basically grocery retail ecosystem. And you see, in human lives as an Indian, the kind of a lifestyle and the food habits what we are having, barely we consume 300 to 400 SKUs in a basically upper segment, right? So most of the brands, they are basically confusing, unnecessary, basically penetrating a various kind of a product range and all that. So 90% of the Indian population is still feeding basically from mom and pop shops. The only is that we need to apply the proper retail practices on these shops, right? So that they can address the need of their basically consumers So that the way you told me that you are going to Kirana Walas whenever you don't find your things, basically. But we cater a different philosophy that you should go online whenever you don't find your need things, basically.
That's exactly
So most of the things, what we are planning, that the basic need, chawal, chini, atta, maida, suji, besan, dal, dalia, tel, ghee, right? So the basic 80% of the requirement of the people should meet out from these kirana shops. And for specialty products, let's say if you want to sell kind of mayonnaise, some imported cheese, or any kind of a sauce. So if you are unable to find out, might be you can go on. So still we believe that empowering this traditional ecosystem, and they have proven basically. And largely you have said that communication is very important. In digital, you cannot communicate. So might be he will recommend you कि this भैया काजू बादाम चाहिए तो ये काजू अच्छा है, ये बादाम अच्छा है. मेरे पास में ये तेल नहीं है तो मैं क्या ये भेज दूं क्या? So in physical business, basically, whenever the retailer communicate to the consumer, they convert. Even though he's out of stock, let's say if you ask a Fortune oil, he's out of stock, he will say, okay, मेरे पास परंपरा है. He will say that कोई बात नहीं भेज दे. Basically, so the individual retailer is having huge power, basically, convincing power and connections and the emotional connect. So we believe that mom and pop shops got huge attention, and any startup basically who is going to work to empower them basically in terms of adding value to their business can have a large opportunity in terms of for digital payments and especially for last mile connectivity. So various things basically. And also one more thing I would like to add here. See, various startups are working in pieces basically for the kirana. Somebody is bringing POS, somebody is bringing supply chain, somebody is bringing digital payment, because currently we are working with more than 10-20 companies for the ancillary services tie-ups. So one thing we have to understand for the grocery retail, the retail whole is an ecosystem. So whereas the retailer is important, retailer empowerment is important, and of course the supply chain is important, and the consumer acquisition is also component. So that's how I'm taking 1 minute extra because during this last 1 month time, the mom and pop shops are playing a very big role, right? So our fundamentals, we believe in 5 points: standardization, digitization, centralization, localization, and socialization. So there are 5 core pillars what we are working, and that's how we are empowering. So we believe that there is a huge opportunity for the startups who are working in that space in terms of last mile connectivity, for the logistic tools, for payment gateways. So we need to understand the way business takes place, and according to the practices of the retailer and practices of the consumers, whoever bring any kind of a reasonable solution, it can really give us the result very fast. So that's what my philosophy about the grocery retail.
Okay, so we are receiving a lot of questions, and I would also like to announce that anyone who has any question, you can type in your questions. We'll take your questions one by one, and we'll take as many as questions as we can. And one question we have is, so how we'll go about the question and answers that any one of you can answer that question. If you have any specific point to make to that question, you can also chip in. This is the paucity of time. So first question is, what is your take on service industry like dental health? It's asked by Arpita Anand. Take on service industry like dental health.
This is a difficult one, actually. As Kaustubh said, contactless healthcare, dental health cannot be contactless. It's very, very difficult unless you have such a high definition camera that you open your mouth in front of the camera screen, and the doctor somehow manages to look there and say like, this is what you need to do. Or unless you have a bad tooth, and like old times, your mom or your daddy will tie a string and put a piece of coal in front of your face and you'll pull it back. I think for dental health, my best advice would be, if you brush your teeth already 2 times a day, make it 4. Gargle more often, because until this pandemic settles, right? You're gonna have to get a curfew pass to go and meet your dentist, and before that, you'll have to convince your dentist to get a curfew pass to come to his clinic, because he also might face that challenge. That's what I'd say. I'm sorry, it's not a very enlightening answer, but that's the first one that came into my mind.
That's a reality.
Okay. Great. So we have another question from Rohit Sharma. It's from Shadi Dukan. He has asked two questions. First question is already been answered about the salaries bit. Second question is that he wants to ask that why are some very well-funded startups like Tribo, Make My Trip, Shop Kirana, Wholesale Box, etc., has started layoffs so soon? If this is the situation that very well funded startups are not able to stay unactioned for a couple of months, is this not putting the question on the working pattern of startups?
I think the answer of this lies in the experiences we've had, and I'll build on what Amit sir said. You're a very well, funded startup. Where have you used that funding? Have you used it to build a runway, or have you used it for other stuff where you shouldn't have actually put it in? So these are startups whose investors should be asking them some really hard things right now. That, you guys were well funded. The idea of actually funding a startup from an investor is that build a runway, have a crisis management, kind of protocol in place. You should be able, actually businesses. If you look at a storm, let's look at the analogy of a storm, right? Huge storm comes. It's only the strong tree with strong roots that will survive. So you'll see a withering tree with a very thin branch is going to be there, but a huge tree is going to be overturned. It simply means that, above the ground, you might have a huge trunk, but below the ground, you didn't have good roots. So I think the same analogy will work for businesses. If your roots are not strong, if your business is not right, you're gonna suffer. It's gonna happen. It's happened with so many people already. It's gonna continue happening with you. Like, what you do with your funding, how you build it, not be greedy. And also for the fact of the matter, these employees, you should retain these employees. You should, the first thing is you should be able to have enough to retain your employees. I really respect what Amit sir says. He's not planning to lay off people, which actually tells me he's a better businessman than most of the well-funded people I've actually met or spoken to.
I think इसका आंसर दो तरीके से देते हैं. It's not about कि कोई मन से करता है ले ऑफ या कॉस्ट कट. लोगों के पैसे बचते नहीं है फ्रैंकली. वो वेल फंडेड हैं, बड़े बड़े अमाउंट है, पर उनके बर्न भी उतने ही बड़े हैं. Like Tribo practically will have zero revenue for next months to come. Like Tribo is not going to come back. Similarly, the smaller ones like say Wholesale Box. So I've obviously raised a lot of money in life, maybe in excess of $250 million. But जब पहला इन्वेस्टर आता है तो वो क्या चाहता है कि सेकंड इन्वेस्टर को जब जाए तो ग्रोथ रेट इतनी हाई हो कि अगली बार वैल्यूएशन बेटर लगे. तो नोबडी प्लान्स फॉर रनवे एंड दोस डेज. फर्स्ट जब 10-5 मिलियन की फंडिंग होती है, फिर 15 की होती है, फिर 50 की, फिर 100 की. सारे स्टेज मैंने देखे हैं पर्सनली. Each investor who comes in wants the next round very high valuation so that the growth rate has to be much higher. So nobody thinks about runway at that point or unit economics at that point, because the only objective is to capture market share, grab it, and get a better round, and your investors will force you, by the way. Jala grow karo.
But I think that works. I actually think that's a mindset that needs to change, Amit sir, because आपको valuation छोड़ के you'll have to start looking at value now, especially in this world that we are living in. Valuation alone won't help you. You'll have to start looking at value, and you should, if your investors are talking like this, then probably you need to relook at who are the investors you're dealing with, who are the people you're dealing with, because valuation can drop overnight. You've seen what happened with the WeWork. They were going in for almost a $50 billion IPO. They've reduced to 8, right? And the IPO didn't happen. Valuation can tank overnight. Value is much more long lasting. And value just doesn't come from what's on your balance sheet. It comes from your people. So how you treated your employees in the past? So for example, have you treated your employees well enough to say, okay, this organization belongs to me as well? So if you're facing a difficulty as an organization, as a leader, I'm going to chip in with you. Similarly, do your investors say that okay, everyone is facing a problem. It's
while hypothetically it sounds good, but it doesn't work like that in real world.
That's I think
a seed investor will have different expectation of the return. A Series A will have a different expectation. A Series B, C. Each one of them is a different segment, and each one of them is playing a different stroke. So for a guy who's gonna put in say 1 million checks in 100 companies, he just needs 2-3 to work. Done. The guy who's coming, like in my stage company, somebody who's gonna put in knows कि return उतना high नहीं आएगा, but money की safety ज़्यादा हो. You're near IPO, you're a few years off, scale is much larger, the business is now hard to collapse or die. The chances of shutting down are much different, right? So my point is not that right now when you see layoffs or hear things, understand the founder is also going through a crisis where the survival time left is little. और जो पैसा बचा है वो कहाँ डालना है, या जीरो रेवेन्यू के साथ तो सस्टेन कर सकता है इतना खर्चा, probably नहीं. तो उसके पर्सपेक्टिव से I still luckily had raised 2 rounds just before all this happened, but not everybody in that shape. Neither the burn rate would be matching. So each one would go on and try to increase कि मेरे पास अगर 3 महीने का रन में तो 6 कैसे कर लूँ, 6 महीने का रन में तो 12 कैसे कर लूँ, otherwise I'll die. And eventually if I die, जो भी बचे सबको lay off करना पड़ेगा. Forget about keeping anybody in that case. So it's better to live to die another day. My philosophy is you should live to die another day. अगर सब कुछ आज खर्च कर दिया और तुम्हारी 3 महीने में दुकान बंद हो जाती है तो फायदा क्या हो? Then तो सबको lay off करना ही पड़ेगा automatically, right?
I would so basically a lot of startups and freelancers and entrepreneur enthusiasts also are a part of this session right now. So I would request all of the panelists, like Kaustubh sir is a good design thinker, Harji sir has been a brand consultant, Anup sir have been traveling to so many countries and have a good experience, even Amit sir. So if we can help with 1 or 2 strategies or 1 or 2 opportunities which a startup can think of, or what some opportunities are there in this particular lockdown time, which any freelance person or any initial person who's thinking of start some business can think of. So if each of you can, come put light on this. I mean, what is the opportunity in this time? So Kaustubh sir, if you could start with something.
As I'll just summarize what I said earlier and add on to one. I mean, in EdTech, AR, VR, I said. In education, also I mentioned about for the nursing bit, 3D anatomy, physiology, organs to give a real experience. That was one. Real estate, I talked about. People are getting used to working from home, so maybe office spaces might become. I mean, demand will go less. So, but demand for warehouses, as I said, will increase. So that's somewhere there is a space there. The way real estate, I feel because people are working from home, people wouldn't mind staying further away from their offices. So the whole model of city center having a higher real estate per square foot cost and suburbs having low might start getting reversing. So that could happen. Then a lot of people are streaming stuff online. People are working from home. People are watching Prime, Netflix, etc., etc., etc. So bandwidth is getting sucked. So I am looking at collaborative computing being, our computers at home could become servers. So people in that networking technology have, I think, a big scope that can be captured. In fact, Microsoft has been doing it for the last 12 years or so, but hasn't really gone public, gone really big with that. So I think that's one big space. Somebody who's into networking, etc., should be looking at. That's one area which I had not spoken about earlier, so that's an addition from my side.
Okay, Anup sir, your point of view on this? Some opportunities for startups at this time.
So especially for our sector, what we are operating, I see there is a quite reasonable opportunity, whereas the startup can think over about some innovation or innovative ideas to reach to the last mile, basically keeping in mind the working style of the retailers and the need of the consumer at the front end part. At the same time is the basically back end part. So more or less the back end also supply chain part, how the machine learning can help and how the artificial intelligence can help us to predict the demand well in advance, especially so that we can manage our supply chain well before the time or on the time. At the same time is basically front end side. So how we can manage basically the fill rate on these shops to satisfy to the customer and to meet out the requirement of the consumers. So I believe that there is a reasonable opportunity, especially for machine learning and artificial intelligence in terms of a supply chain at the back end, at the front end, as well as varied innovations for the last mile logistics.
Okay. Amit sir, your points on this, some opportunities you feel?
देखो अपॉर्चुनिटीज तो बहुत सारी आने वाली है जहाँ पर कॉन्टैक्ट है कम और कॉन्टैक्ट कम होना है. When people in the group that are asking, यहाँ से आइडिया नहीं निकलेगा तुम्हारा. तुम्हारे को खुद एक प्रॉब्लम सोचनी पड़ेगी जिसको तुम सॉल्व करना चाहते हो. एंड यू हैव टू फील पैशनेट अबाउट इट. एंड इट्स लाइक अ जेन्युइन प्रॉब्लम यू फेल्ट एज अ young startup founder.
Yeah.
यहाँ पर ध्यान देने से नहीं आएगा वो आइडिया. इज व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू से प्रोबेबली.
Okay.
किसी चीज के लिए बहुत आपने जेन्युइनली प्रॉब्लम फेस करी है और आप उसको सॉल्व करने जा रहे हो. एंड दैट्स हाउ इट ऑल स्टार्टअप्स प्रैक्टिकली वर्क. स्टार्टअप्स जब होती है एक प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व करने के लिए होती है स्टार्ट, ना कि वैल्यूएशन या फंडिंग लेने के लिए स्टार्ट होती है.
Correct.
तो फर्स्ट फील स्ट्रांगली अबाउट अ प्रॉब्लम सिचुएशन. उसको आप सॉल्व करने निकलो एज यंग फाउंडर. एंड मेक श्योर व्हाइल यू आर सॉल्विंग इट, यूनिट इकोनॉमिक्स ऑफ द ट्रांजैक्शन इज एटलीस्ट नॉट नेगेटिव. So that's how you should think about it. कि
Okay.
अब सारे सेक्टर्स में अपॉर्चुनिटी बनने वाली. देयर इज नो सेक्टर दैट वोंट हैव अपॉर्चुनिटी. सो इफ यू आस्क मी कहाँ बहुत तरीके की बनेंगी. एजुकेशन ले लो आप, लैंडिंग ले लो. अब कोई लैंडिंग का बिजनेस करे तो मतलब lending is gonna be tough now, but lending would still be needed, and you can now lend at better rates, higher rates. If you can control your NPA through your intelligence, you can have a great business. But can you do that is a big question. It requires fundamentally different background. So play on your strength first. Step back and think कि मेरे को क्या अच्छा आता है. मैं कोडर हूँ.
With passion.
Plan accordingly. It doesn't work like कोई idea आया चलो कर देते हैं. It doesn't work. You should feel passionate about it as a founder. That's the only way to run something. Is how I would put it.
Okay. Harji sir, some points from your side.
I've missed out on the question all over. Matlab, everyone's spoken about a lot of stuff. You'll have to refresh the question
So
for me.
basically, my question was, at this lockdown, because when there's economy going down, again, there's a lot of opportunities at the right time. So what do you think? What do you feel? What is the right segment, or how can a startup? What is the opportunity a startup can look at right now?
See, as I mentioned earlier in what I said, education, healthcare, and alternative energy are three sectors which I think are definitely worth looking at for startups. All the brilliant minds at home who are locked down, if and building on what kya kehte hain, other panelists said, Kaustubh sir specifically, network better, collaborate better.
Okay.
This is a time for actual work together and hyper collaboration. People talk about hyper localization. I think hyper collaboration is going to become very real. Example being, Big Basket is now using an Uber for actually fulfilling their orders. They're not actually competitors. So what I call them is friends with benefits. You'll have to find in your business ecosystem friends with benefits, right? Like that. What you'll also have to find is actually the frenemies. And that is, it's already happening at a higher level. A Google, an Apple, and Amazon, they might be competing with each other, but they also work together. They share resources, intelligence. That's going to actually trickle down. Now you'll have to identify a part of the vertical supply chain that you're good at, but you'll also have to look all around you that who are the people who are as good as you, maybe in an affiliated side of the supply chain, and partner with them. That's a big opportunity. I think the opportunity here is actually to sit in and plan better. During this this period of lockdown, you can of course upskill. There are a lot of memes about how people should not be upskilling, and everyone's giving me gyan about not upskilling. You can upskill. You can learn. There are parts when if you're starting up, for example, you're a tech guy who wants to start up, but then you're only good at tech. You're not good at the business side of it. You're not good at the marketing side of it. So use this opportunity to upskill, because even if you hire a business or a marketing expert, you will still be the entrepreneur who will have to manage and lead the company if you're the decision maker. So I think these are the opportunities people should look at.
So I think what I can conclude from all the panelists is one thing, the tech opportunity. So we have a tech session coming up with Nishchay, who is has a founding company at tech. So one thing which I can conclude is there are a lot of opportunities for tech, AR, VR. So I would request all the attendees to join in. And second thing which I could conclude is collaborations. So even we are trying to do the same. So for example, we are trying to get office spaces built, and we are trying to collaborate with the property owners. And as the real estate is going to go into damn sure into doldrums. So that is what we're trying to do, is collaborate with tech people, the property owners, and we can convert those dead properties into life, and some or the other way, making it more sanitized. Or so I think collaborations and tech are the two things which is gonna be.
Himesh, I'd like to add to that. Yes, tech is going to be very, very important. But here's how I look at tech. Tech is tech now in 2020 where we live is no longer, in my mind, an industry category. It's an enabler. It will have to underpin every business idea that you have today. So looking at tech just, purely as an industry category won't work anymore. You'll have to build a value chain above tech. A very interesting point that was made. It's not just tech. I think manufacturing sector has a huge opportunity in India now. And when I said this earlier, very interesting, a couple of days back, I'll take an extra minute. I told someone that India will be an alternative to China. And, for the manufacturing sector. And the response I got was, but will we be able to make a cheap, will we able to make stuff at the cost that China makes it, so cheap? So let's get one myth out of the way. China doesn't make cheap stuff. The producers give them cheap briefs. You can make a $1 thing in China and they'll earn only 30 cents out of it. You can make a $100,000 thing in China. Depends on your brief and what you're willing to spend on. If we bring that same thing here, we have technologies today like additive manufacturing, advanced materials, and 3D printing. If we can build our manufacturing sector to complement our services and IT sector, as an economy, as a country, we have a much better, a road ahead, and we have a chance of actually recovering from all the economic issues that are going to happen after now and after COVID. As India, we have a better chance of actually recovering from that if we keep these things in mind.
Yeah, before we let go of the panel, I have a very interesting question, which I think nobody's addressed till now. So if I may, before we move on to the next session, I just wanted to take this question. This question comes from Hina Beg. Good question. Hi, this is Hina, and I'm just paraphrasing now. Hi, this is Hina. I'm a hospitality professional. I've been furloughed due to the current situation. What do you feel as industry experts will happen to the hospitality sector and travel after the pandemic gets over? That is a very, very relevant question, because one of the key industries which has been targeted across the board is the travel bit itself. So if I'm keeping it across to all the panelists across over here, if they can just answer this particular question, and I think then most of our session is pretty much over. Just a very, very interesting question from a travel perspective. That's why I wanted to jump in over here.
It will take at least 6 to 9 months for it to even come back to where it was ever. Is how I foresee it. People are not going to go into vacation mode when so much panic is going to happen and Corona is still not over. Right? Secondly, I think there's macro things that will impact if a vaccine is discovered sooner. It will be a very different answer versus how the ambiguity goes on.
Sure.
Because until a vaccine comes up, Corona really doesn't die. It's still there, and you're scared to not go to places where you can still catch it. So, discovery of vaccine will definitely be a very different answer versus ambiguous times. I foresee a very big impact on travel sector at least for 6 to 9 months from now. It will be the last sector to recover. Let's put it that way. It will be one of the last sectors to recover.
Fair enough. Kaustubh sir, you had a point, and I can see that.
I see travel tourism has two components. Yeah. One is the enabler, and one is the property or the site that one visits. All right. So enablers are those aggregators, travel agents, XYZ, airlines, etc. But when people travel to see places, experience the beauty, etc. Those kinds of things. So let's look at them separately.
Sure.
So I call them as the properties where people would like to go and visit, and the enablers. Now, because of this travel embargoes and things like that, people are not going to travel, as Amit rightly said, maybe a year or more also. Now, I feel the property owners will employ technology to make people experience those things in their houses.
Right.
Okay? So that's where, again, AR, VR, etc., comes into the picture. And now, how they monetize it will have to be really seen. You want to visit the Louvre, so you buy an ex-Europe pass and get in. Now that has to become non-contact, sitting in your house. How is that going to happen? So that's where folks like you, I suppose you are a tech guy, collaborate with Louvre and give that experience to me in my house, and how does that property monetize it? That's the way I see the tech. I mean, the travel industry kind of repositioning or redirecting themselves.
Here I would like to add some value, basically, some few thoughts. So what I believe that travel and tourism in two parts, one is for called business and one is called pleasure. So the business traveler, this due to this COVID-19, to be very frank, personally myself also I have realized that many things can be finished sitting in on Zoom camera rather than traveling. And earlier maybe you was traveling for a small job to meet people and to finish your job. So business-wise is going to be, of course, a lot of cost cutting, time savings. And of course, for the pleasure side, since the economy, the slowdown is going to become, and due to all this crisis and due to all this safe distancing and all that, so the pleasure traveling is also going to be less. The biggest hit, which is the sector which is going to face, is all about the tour and travel, basically. That's what my philosophy.
I think I'll take one last question because this again has come in. The question, I mean, while it's been addressed to Harji, the question is, what is the future of mental health after COVID-19 episode itself? Right. So I'll keep it across the board because I think there are a lot of people who because of the quarantine have to go through this, and I think it's a relevant question to ask also. Right. I think we did not touch upon this with this particular panel. So last question, and then we're off. Then we'll move on to the next session itself. Sorry again. I mean, I keep on saying last question, but it's not the last question.
I have. I'd love to hear what other panelists say on this because I believe this is a very important question. But let me start by saying mental health has been an issue for a very long time. Why it has not come forward is because there's actually a taboo attached to mental health in India. People have a problem visiting a psychiatrist or a psychologist or, wondering that what will people say? I don't want to be seen in those clinics. So it's a it's extremely prevalent. Depression, stress, and other mental health issues are very prevalent. What I hope that this will do is that people will at least start accepting the fact that they need help. The thing is, there are people out there who are willing to help. There are actually qualified people there willing to help. But it's the people who need the help actually, they don't want to go. So that mindset I do see changing. I do see a lot more people reaching out to their, the therapist and talking to them. And probably this is where a virtual, a consultation comes in. It's a contactless consultation. You just need to speak to an enlightened person who can tell you how to navigate all the stress factors you're feeling. Right. And I think people should open their mind and understand that this is not a dysfunction. This is actually a result of leading a high stress life. So stop looking at it as a flaw, but start looking at it as like, a wound that just needs a band-aid.